right, ready to dive in? Today we're looking at flattery and small talk.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, and to get into it, we've got this YouTube video from EnglishPod.
EnglishPod, yeah.
They teach English as a second language.
Okay.
And they break down this conversation between two women.
Okay.
And get this, the two women secretly can't stand each other.
Oh, that's juicy. That's fascinating. I mean, even when people are being insincere, they still use these techniques.
Right, exactly.
It shows you how universal it is.
Yeah.
How important flattery and small talk are.
Yeah, it's like we're getting a behind-the-scenes look at how people really talk.
Yeah.
So the first thing EnglishPod points out is flattery.
Okay.
We all know it's about giving compliments, but they actually point out some phrases that are really effective.
Like what?
I love what you've done with.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's so versatile.
Right.
You can use it for almost anything.
Yeah.
Like in the video, they use it to compliment a new hairstyle. But you could use it for anything. Like a work project, or someone redecorated their house, even like someone's garden.
Oh, I like that.
It's about acknowledging positive change and effort, and people really respond to that.
That's so interesting. It's not just the words themselves, it's like the psychology behind it.
Totally.
And what I think is fascinating is that it works even if you're not being completely sincere.
Right. Yeah, which is a little unsettling when you think about it, but from a language perspective, it's very effective.
Yeah.
And that leads us to another one that EnglishPod points out. You haven't aged a day.
Oh, who doesn't love to hear that?
Right.
It's like, come on.
Exactly.
That taps into something so deep.
It does.
It's like we all want to be eternally youthful.
Yeah.
And when someone says that to you, it just,
Yeah.
it makes you feel good.
It really does.
It makes you wonder, is it the words themselves or is it that deeper meaning that they're evoking?
I know.
It's like a cheat code.
It is. It's like a shortcut to get a positive response out of somebody.
Yeah. Okay, so what else did they find?
Well, they also point out this phrase, he is such a handsome guy. And what's interesting about this one is the structure.
Oh, I see what you mean. You can swap out handsome.
It's
Any other compliment?
for anything.
Oh, excellent.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a formula, but by using such a formula, you're emphasizing that adjective. You could say he's such a talented artist.
She's such a brilliant scientist.
Exactly. And suddenly you sound like you give really good compliments.
I think we're learning the cheat codes here.
We are. We're learning the secrets.
I like it.
Okay, so another one that they point out, this one I thought was particularly clever. He gets his looks from his mother.
Wait, hold on.
It's a double whammy.
Yeah, it is a double whammy. It is clever.
You're complimenting the person and their family.
I never thought of it that way. Why does that work so well?
Because it makes us think about inherited traits, right? Like good genes.
Yeah, we admire that.
We admire people with good genes. So when you attribute someone's good qualities to their lineage, you're saying they were meant to be awesome.
I'm starting to see flattery in a whole new light.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It is. It's really subtle.
Yeah, and even though this conversation's kind of a setup,
right?
It's giving us some real-world tools.
It is. It's like having a toolbox full of expressions.
Yeah.
That you can adapt for any situation.
Okay, I like it.
But I think since we're learning about these powerful phrases, it brings up a question.
What's that?
When does flattery cross the line from being a compliment to being manipulative?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Yeah, it's something to think about as we move into small talk, because that can be just as tricky.
Small talk can be so awkward.
It can be.
EnglishPod has some good stuff to say about this too.
Oh, good.
They start with this simple phrase, it's been such a long time.
Okay.
Seems pretty straightforward on the surface.
Right.
But I'm guessing there's more to it. There's a subtle art to it. Oh, there really is. Think about it. You run into someone and you haven't seen them in forever.
Yeah.
It can get so awkward.
Yeah, totally.
So what do you say? Like, oh, hi, how about this weather we're having?
Yeah, or just like crickets.
Exactly. But if you say, it's been such a long time, it just smooths everything over.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You're implying that you wish you had talked to them sooner.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't.
That's true.
You probably haven't.
I like that.
It's like you're saying, hey, I value our connection, even though we haven't talked in a while.
It's sneaky.
It is sneaky. It's effective.
So you've reconnected. Now, how do you actually make conversation?
Well, this is where EnglishPod gives us another great tool.
Okay.
By the way, I heard this one's so good because it lets you introduce new topics, even if you're not totally sure about the information.
Wait, really?
Yeah, so you could be like, by the way, I heard you started a podcast.
Even if I like vaguely remember seeing something on their Instagram.
Exactly.
Wow.
You're inviting them to either confirm or correct you, which keeps the conversation going.
That's clever.
And makes you look interested in their life.
It's like a win-win.
It is. It's genius.
Okay, I like it.
It really takes the pressure off of you to have all the information before you start talking.
Totally.
Okay, so now let's say you need to make a graceful exit.
Okay.
How do you end the small talk without being rude?
It's an art.
It is. It's the art of escape. English Pod points out the classic, "It's been great talking to you, but I have to get going."
Oh, yeah.
It's polite, it's clear, and it really doesn't give them much room to keep you there.
Yeah, and I noticed that they use the phrase "get going" there.
Yeah.
Which I know can be tricky for non-native speakers.
Right.
It's kind of like this code word.
It is. It's like saying, "I gotta bounce."
Yeah.
And you know what I thought was interesting? Even the non-native speakers in this video are using these idiomatic expressions so well.
Right.
And that shows just how important it is to sound natural and to fit in.
Right. It's like, the secret handshake.
Exactly.
We've been talking about the specific phrases, but I'm curious, why do we even do this whole flattery and small talk thing?
That's a great question.
Sometimes it feels kind of pointless,
I know, but it goes deeper than you think.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
If we think about it from like an evolutionary perspective, these behaviors probably had a big social purpose.
Like what?
Well, flattery, for example, could have been a way to build alliances or strengthen bonds.
Interesting.
When you compliment someone, you're signaling that you value them.
Right.
So like way back in the day, you're a caveman and you tell another caveman, "Hey, I really like your spear throwing skills."
You're probably increasing your chances of survival.
Exactly.
By getting on his good side.
Exactly. You're showing respect and hoping that maybe later on he'll help you out.
Okay, yeah.
So now let's think about small talk.
Okay.
A lot of people think it's so trivial, but it also plays a role in social cohesion.
Okay.
It helps us find common ground, build rapport.
I see.
So instead of just jumping right into a deep discussion, about the meaning of life or whatever, you ease into things.
You start with something like, "Hey, beautiful day, isn't it?"
Exactly. You test the waters.
Yeah.
You get a feel for the other person.
You build up to it.
Yeah, you wouldn't walk into a party and just start sharing your deepest, darkest secrets.
No, definitely not.
Unless it was that kind of party.
Maybe.
But you see my point.
I do.
You got to create a safe space for interaction.
Right.
So you gradually reveal more about yourself.
Yeah, I get it.
As trust and familiarity grows.
It's a dance.
It is. It's a dance. And the cool thing is, we learn this when we're really little.
Oh, yeah.
Kids are always watching. They're imitating the grown-ups.
Like little sponges.
They are. They're just soaking it all up.
All those little social cues.
And as we get older, we keep refining these skills.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation and who we're with.
Right. So we're talking about this like it's a skill.
Yeah.
So does that mean that anyone can get better at it?
Well, that's the good news.
Okay.
It does mean that.
I like it. It's really amazing how much we've learned just by looking at one conversation.
Yeah, you don't really think about it.
We think of flattery and small talk as these, kind of surface level interactions.
Right.
But there's actually so much strategy and psychology going on.
Yeah, there really is.
But going back to that English Pod video.
Okay.
Those two women were giving each other all these compliments, but they were totally faking it.
Right, it was all an act.
So they were being manipulative.
Exactly. Flattery can definitely be a tool for manipulation.
Yeah.
Especially if someone's trying to get something from you or create some kind of false sense of intimacy.
It happens everywhere.
Everywhere.
Relationships, work, even politics.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's like, beware of strangers bearing gifts.
Exactly.
Sometimes those over-the-top compliments are hiding something.
Definitely.
It reminds me of this article I read about how companies use flattery to get their employees to work more.
Oh, yeah.
Like they'll give them tons of praise and then just pile on the work.
Classic tactic.
It is.
They're buttering you up so you'll do what they want.
Yeah, and it works because we all want to be appreciated.
We do.
So how do we know if someone's being genuine or if they're trying to play us?
Well, you just have to be aware.
Okay.
Pay attention to what's going on. Like if someone's suddenly giving you a ton of compliments, especially if it seems out of character for them, you got to ask yourself what they might be trying to get from you.
Like, what's the catch?
Yeah, exactly. Are they trying to get you to do them a favor?
Right.
Are they gunning for a promotion?
If it seems too good to be true.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb.
It probably.
Yeah, trust your gut.
Yeah.
And that same awareness applies to small talk too.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, small talk can be used in bad ways, too.
Okay.
Like those groups that use all this insider language.
Yeah, to make you feel left out.
Exactly.
Like a way to exclude people.
Right. Or the way some people use small talk to dominate a conversation.
Oh, yeah, they interrupt all the time.
Yeah, or they always bring the conversation back to themselves.
It's like they're using small talk as a weapon.
It is. So we have to be mindful.
Yeah.
And make sure we're using small talk for good.
To be inclusive and respectful.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've come full circle.
We have.
Flattery and small talk, they're powerful tools.
Yeah.
But they can be used in good ways and bad ways.
It all depends on the person's intent.
Right. And how aware we are of what's going on.
I think you put it perfectly.
I think we've done a pretty good job unpacking all this.
I think so.
Hopefully you're leaving with a new understanding of flattery and small talk.
Yeah, and some practical tips on how to use them effectively.
And maybe a little bit of healthy skepticism too.
Always a good thing.
So until next time, keep those ears open, minds engaged, and remember, sometimes the most interesting conversations happen in the spaces between the words.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into how humans interact.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're diving deep into conversational English today. We're going to be looking at a recent episode of Simply Explained English, pulling out some really useful words and expressions, things that you can use to sound more natural when you're speaking.
Yeah, what I really like about this podcast is how they use these words in dialogues. You know, it's not just like, here's the word, here's the definition. You actually get to hear how native speakers would use these words and phrases in conversation.
Okay, cool. So they start off with the word to pack, but it's not just about packing a suitcase. Like they use this expression, pack light, which I guess is what you want to do if you don't want to bring a lot of stuff with you.
Yeah, exactly. Pack light basically means just bring the essentials. And in the dialogue, they actually have kind of a funny debate, the two hosts, about, you know, what counts as essential. One of them is like, I always have to pack a hat to protect myself from the sun. The other one's like, no jewelry is essential. Gotta have jewelry to look elegant. So it's kind of funny how they show that there's no one right way to pack.
Oh yeah, that reminds me of this one time I was going to a conference and I thought I could fit everything in my carry-on bag. Yeah, let's just say I learned my lesson about packing light the hard way. Okay, so after packing, they move on to a word that I think is super important for anyone learning a new language, which is confidence.
And they do a really good job of like breaking down the meaning of confidence. It's not just about, you know, like feeling sure of yourself, but also like having this belief in your abilities. And they even give a good example of how you can encourage someone who's maybe a bit nervous, you know, like a teacher telling a student, you got this, just be confident.
Yeah, I love that. Like, hey, you got this, be confident, which is something I need to tell myself sometimes. Especially when I'm trying to use, you know, a new English expression.
For sure, for sure.
Okay, so then they go on to this word, common. And they use the example of smartphones. Which, I mean, come on. Is there anything more common than a smartphone these days?
Right, like everyone has one. But then this actually leads into a discussion about common languages around the world. Did you know Mandarin Chinese is the most spoken language, with over 1 billion speakers, followed by English?
Wow. 1 billion speakers. That's incredible.
Puts things into perspective.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so from common things to something we all experience, which is growing up.
And they really emphasize that it's more than just, you know, getting older. It's about all those changes that happen as we mature, right? And in the dialogue, they have this kind of like bittersweet feeling of like looking back at childhood, but also being excited for new experiences as an adult.
Yeah, I like that. And they talk about how growing up can change how you look, your personality, even what you're interested in. Like it's this ongoing process of discovery.
For sure, for sure.
And you know, in a way, I think language learners are kind of growing up too, like developing new skills.
Yeah.
Gaining confidence, finding new ways to express themselves. Okay, so after tackling the complexities of growing up, they end this section with an idiom that's music to my ears, especially as a language learner. It's not rocket science.
Which basically means it's not that hard. You know, it's not complicated. Like they use the example of cooking spaghetti. Anyone can learn to cook spaghetti. It's not rocket science.
And I think that's such a good message for language learners.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can feel intimidated. Like, oh my gosh, learning English is so difficult. But they're saying, hey, you can do this. It's not impossible.
It's a good reminder to not overthink things. Just start practicing and you'll get there.
Exactly. So we've packed our bags, we're feeling confident, now we're ready to dive into some common English expressions.
Sounds good. Let's do it. Yeah, it's a good analogy, right? Like, it just takes the pressure off. It reminds us that learning a language is a journey, not a race or anything. Okay, so we've kind of got the vocabulary basics. Now, Simply Explained English moves on to, like, common expressions, the kind of phrases that native speakers just throw into their conversations all the time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always interested to learn those. Sometimes those expressions can be tricky. So what's the first one they look at?
They start with to look forward to. And this is a really useful expression. It basically means you're excited about something that's going to happen in the future.
Oh, yeah. I use that one all the time.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm looking forward to seeing what other expressions they talk about.
Yeah. I bet they use the classic example of, like, looking forward to the weekend.
Probably. I mean, who doesn't look forward to the weekend, right?
Exactly. But what's interesting is they show how you can use it for, like, big things and small things. So, like, yeah, looking forward to a vacation. But also, looking forward to just, like, grabbing coffee with a friend.
Right. It's all about those moments that make you happy,
Yeah.
big or small. Okay, so speaking of connecting with people, the next expression is to get along with, which is obviously all about relationships.
Yeah. It basically means, like, you have a good relationship with someone.
Yeah.
You enjoy spending time with them. You don't, like, drive each other crazy or anything.
Right. But they probably go a bit deeper than that, right? It's not just about, like, avoiding arguments.
Yeah, exactly. They point out that, like, you don't have to agree with someone on everything to get along with them. It's more about, like, mutual respect,
Yeah.
Understanding each other's point of view, even if you don't always see eye to eye.
That's a good point. Like, I have friends who have totally different tastes in music than me, or movies or whatever, but we still get along great because we respect each other's opinions.
I think that's really important.
It is. Okay, so getting along, check. What's the next expression we need to master?
Okay, so this one is all about making decisions. It's to make up one's mind. And honestly, this is something I struggle with sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. I am the queen of indecision. Like, seriously, if I have to choose what to eat at a restaurant, it takes me forever.
And that's actually a perfect example of another expression they use, which is to be on the fence. Like when you just can't decide between two options?
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling. I'm on the fence all the time.
And they do a really good job in the dialogue of, like, showing that inner struggle, that back and forth.
Yeah.
When you're trying to weigh the pros and cons.
Yeah. So do they give any tips on how to, like, finally make a decision?
They do. They talk about things like, making a list, thinking about what's really important to you, and sometimes just, like,
trusting your gut.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to go with your gut.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've packed our bags, we're feeling confident, we're getting along with everyone, and we're making decisions. What else is there?
Okay, next up is to take care of, which can have a few different meanings, but in this case, they're using it to mean, like, looking after someone or something, making sure they're okay.
Oh, I get it. Like taking care of a pet or a plant.
Yeah, exactly. Or even, like, taking care of a responsibility at work.
Right. So it's like, it implies that you're responsible for something, but also that you care about it.
Exactly. They use the example of taking care of an elderly relative. Oh, that's sweet. It reminds me of my neighbor. She takes care of this community garden. She's always out there watering the plants and weeding and everything.
That's awesome.
It is. It's like she really loves that garden.
And in a way, I think language learning is also about taking care of ourselves.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, we're nurturing our curiosity, we're expanding our horizons, challenging ourselves to grow.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, ready for the last expression in this set.
Hit me with it. I'm feeling pretty confident now.
All right, this one is for all the problem solvers out there. It's to figure out.
Ooh, to figure out.
Yeah, basically it means, like, you're trying to understand something or find a solution to a problem.
Right. Like when you get a new gadget and you're trying to figure out how to use it.
Exactly. Or like, when you're in a new city.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure out how to get around.
Or when you're learning English.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out the grammar.
Yeah. It's all about, like, using your brain, doing a bit of detective work, and then finally having that, like, aha moment when you finally get it.
I love those aha moments.
Me too. And they also make the point that sometimes it's okay to ask for help when you're trying to figure something out.
Yeah, definitely. Like, you don't have to do everything on your own.
Right.
Sometimes a little help can go a long way.
Absolutely.
Wow, this episode of Simply Explained English is packed with useful stuff.
Yeah, it is. And we've only scratched the surface. They actually go on to talk about even more words and expressions that are really common in everyday conversations.
Cool. Well, I'm ready to keep learning. Bring on the next batch of linguistic treasures.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so let's jump back into this episode of Simply Explained English. What other words and expressions do they cover?
Well, they introduced this word that I think can be a bit tricky sometimes. Weird. It's one of those words that can be like positive or negative, depending on how you use it.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Like, you could say a dream was weird, but you could also say, like, a piece of art is weird.
Yeah.
And it could be a good thing.
Exactly. And in the dialogue, they actually use weird to describe a couple of different things, like a food that someone thinks is weird, and also like a fashion choice that someone thinks is weird. So it kind of shows how weirdness is subjective. Like what's weird to one person might be totally normal to someone else.
Yeah, that's true. It reminds me of how different cultures have different ideas of what's weird.
Right. Like something that might be seen as weird in one culture could be totally normal in another culture.
It's all about perspective, I guess.
And speaking of perspective, the next expression they talk about is point of view, which is basically like how someone sees the world based on their own experiences and beliefs.
Yeah, it's like that saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. You have to understand someone's point of view to really go where they're coming from.
Right, and they emphasize that it's important to respect other people's points of view, even if you don't agree with them. Like it's about having open and honest conversations, even if those conversations are tough sometimes.
Yeah, communication is key, even when it's difficult.
Which actually brings us to the next word, difficult.
Okay, so we've gone from weird to point of view to difficult. This episode is really taking us on a journey.
It is. And even though difficult might seem like a pretty basic word, they point out that like difficulty is relative. You know what's difficult for one person might be easy for someone else.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on your skills and knowledge and stuff.
Exactly. And they even say that challenges, even difficult ones, can be opportunities to learn and grow.
That's a good way to look at it. Like if you're struggling with something, it means you're pushing yourself. You're stepping outside of your comfort zone.
Right, and that's how you get better.
Okay, so we've covered weird, point of view, and difficult. Now let's talk about something we all feel sometimes. Bored.
Yes, boredom, the universal enemy.
Uh-huh.
And in the dialogue, they really capture that feeling of like, you know, when you just don't know what to do with yourself.
I know that feeling. It's the worst.
So do they offer any solutions for how to deal with boredom?
I hope so, because I need all the help I can get.
They do. They suggest things like picking up a new hobby, or exploring a new place, or even just having a good conversation with someone.
Oh yeah, those are all good ideas.
Yeah.
It's all about finding ways to engage your mind.
Exactly. And, you know, learning a new language can be a great way to fight boredom.
For sure. It's like a mental adventure. There's always something new to learn.
Okay, so we've talked about weird, point of view, difficult, and bored. Ready for the last word in this episode?
Bring it on.
It's excited.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's that feeling of like, you know, you're really looking forward to something and you just can't wait.
Right, like when you're about to go on a trip or start a new project that you're really passionate about.
Exactly. And they make the point that excitement can be contagious.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like if you're around someone who's really excited about something, it's hard not to get excited yourself.
It's true.
It's like a positive chain reaction.
I love that. Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah, it is. I feel like we've learned so much from this deep dive into Simply Explained English.
Me too. We've covered a lot of really useful words and expressions.
And I think what's really cool about this podcast is that it shows how you can use these words and expressions in real-life conversations.
Yeah, it's not just about memorizing definitions. It's about understanding how language is actually used.
Right. And I think that's what makes this podcast so valuable for language learners.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking for a fun and engaging way to improve your English, I highly recommend checking out Simply Explained English.
You won't be disappointed. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time.
Happy learning.